Greetings, friends. I am Alexander Musienko. The transformation of war and the role drones will play. Scandal. Trump demands that Ukraine sign an agreement on rare earth metals. Our successes, not on the battlefield, and how Valery Zaluzhny predicted everything. My regards, friends. This is the traditional briefing for you today on this day, March 31st, Monday. And this is the last one. The last day of the first month of spring 2025. Let's talk about what's current and important. So, where did I start? Transformation of combat actions. Now, when there is talk about the anticipation of a possible Russian military offensive, I must say that the Russian offensive will look like it does now. We won't see anything particularly new. There won't be any striking changes on the ground, the land components that would indicate that Russia will now bring in another 300,000 of its army and start something like a new full-scale invasion, which will not happen. They will be reinforcing their contingents, and from time to time, in one area or another, there will be observed activity on the front. There will be flare-ups. Undoubtedly, the enemy will use various forces and means. They will not abandon, obviously, the tank assaults with their small infantry groups. And this will continue to happen. They will not take their own losses into account and will try to advance. But they will not achieve significant success because, as of today, it is important to understand that Russia also needs a pause. They need time to build up capabilities and, frankly speaking, to form a new army that could demonstrate something. They need, let's say, a certain time frame because it won't happen immediately. At the same time, maintaining offensive activity on the front in various sectors, as it is happening now, and we see it in the enemy. Of course, they may have enough forces and resources, and they will continue to replenish them. Mobilization in Russia is ongoing, and corresponding measures are taking place. At the same time, increasing defense expenditures does not mean much because Russia still depends on the supply of weapons from North Korea and Iran. How Iran will carry out this supply, considering that Iran is now practically on the brink of war, because Iranian President Pezeshkian rejected the letter, and he responded with a letter to the initiatives of Donald Trump, the president of the USA, because Trump had previously urged Iran to immediately start negotiations and be ready to discuss halting uranium enrichment, and accordingly the nuclear program in exchange for lifting or suspending sanctions. This is Donald Trump's initiative. The president of Iran, Pezeshkian, responded to this with a sharp letter stating that Iran will not do this. Furthermore, he noted that Iran is ready to strike American bases in the Middle East, military bases, in the event that the rhetoric of the US does not change, if the Americans carry out direct military strikes on our Iranian military facilities directly in Iran. And it's no longer about strikes on Yemeni Houthis, who are often rightly called Iranian proxies. It's specifically about strikes on Iran. And here perhaps the dream of many Israeli politicians will come true who have long awaited such a decision from the US and insisted that the Americans act together with Israel in a coalition and carry out these strikes on Iranian military facilities, something the Americans previously, regardless, did not dare to do. That is, Iran is on the brink of war, and in general, the Middle East is on the verge of igniting into a significant confrontation. This, by the way, is about the so-called diplomatic talent of the US President Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, since the Middle East is primarily his priority, so to speak. So that's the situation. And evidently, Iran will be asking for help from Russia. And here the question is whether Putin will provide assistance to Tehran, whether he is ready to do so. The question remains open because he supposedly promised Trump not to do this during one of their phone conversations. Will he do it now? And if he doesn't, how will this portray Russia in the eyes of the Middle East? It will start losing its positions. So this is also a test. By the way, speaking of phone conversations, the President of the United States did not rule out that soon, once again, he will be ready to talk with the Russian dictator. But returning to the battlefield, considering these trends, the Russian offensive will remain as it is. They will not be able to achieve significant breakthrough successes. But how will the enemy transform the war? The enemy sees that drones are playing. This is a more important role. Unfortunately, Russia has found a cheap way to scale up the production of Shaheds and moreover to improve them. The improvements are taking place against the backdrop of studying Ukraine's capabilities to counter kamikaze drones. These are the capabilities of directly shooting them down using the forces and means that Ukraine employs, such as air defense systems, mobile fire groups, and other resources. This also includes electronic warfare systems. Everything that is qualified and classified by the air forces of the armed forces of Ukraine, when they report and provide us with a report on the downed drones and missiles, where the point location lost is indicated, it means that these drones have undergone intensive work by electronic warfare systems. This is necessary to understand. Therefore, the enemy is studying. The enemy monitors the information, they analyze it, and then work on technical improvements, innovations, and enhancing the performance of their own UAVs, with the aim that these terrorist strikes by Russia cause more and more damage to Ukraine, unfortunately. And the tactic that the enemy will adhere to, they will practically now be shifting the war to the air. From the air, they will try to inflict maximum losses, primarily targeting our cities, primarily civilian buildings, any objects. Russia is simply interested in destruction, devastation, losses, loss of human lives, health, infrastructure, houses. All of this is money. All of these are resources needed for recovery. The enemy's goal is obvious: an attempt to demoralize the Ukrainian population and to create internal political discussions on the internal political turmoil and discord within Ukraine. As of today, this is the enemy's number one goal. The war is transforming, and Russia is likely to even move away from the tactic of large-scale missile strikes. They will invest in drones, trying to cause as much destruction as possible. Therefore, the war in the air, until the ceasefire regime is established, it will obviously be the most threatening. And we need to prepare for this, and we need to understand it. The war is changing right before our eyes. By the way, regarding the future infantrymen, the infantrymen I hope will also be well prepared in the future. A trained Ukrainian infantryman, this is an equipped, technically advanced fighter who carries out tasks and who has at hand the appropriate systems, drones, means robotic systems that even eliminate visual contact with the enemy. That is, it is no longer necessary to exclusively hold positions, be present on them, take great risks at this position, and then leave when you are replaced. This is also the change that will inevitably happen. More and more technical means are being used now, and there will be even more. And perhaps it is hard for someone to believe it now, but it is heading in that direction. Similarly, Ukrainian capabilities must only increase so that we can strike Russia now. It's time to strike Russian military targets, deep strikes and attacks in depth to demonstrate to the enemy, once again, our capabilities. And those few hundred drones that flew a few weeks ago in the Moscow region, this is a very good indicator of how it should be done. That is electronic warfare, drones, technical equipment, intelligence data, better surveillance, more innovative, higher quality drone models. This is the key to what we should be moving towards. This was also foreseen by the former commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, currently the ambassador of Ukraine to the United Kingdom, Valery Zaluzhny. He spoke about it, wrote about it, and has confirmed it once again. We see that this battlefield is transforming, and it is important for us to understand what threats to prepare for and how to counteract them. Will they move forward together with Ukraine on this path? The United States of America, currently we observe that they are But can the situation change in the future? Unfortunately, we must understand that this is also the case. After all, the statement by US President Donald Trump, thank you, during the flight on Air Force One, when he spoke with journalists and stated that supposedly President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky wants to withdraw from the rare earth metals agreement and does not wish to sign it, it indicates that, well, and at the same time, Trump says that it will be difficult for Ukraine, and he would very much not want that, because Ukraine and Zelensky will regret it if they do not sign this agreement. That is, he got angry at Putin as well and said that he is against Russia. Double tariffs and customs duties, as well as sanctions, could be imposed, particularly concerning the sale of Russian oil. But at the same time, do you understand what the difference is? He made a jab. Trump made a jab both towards Zelensky and towards Putin. The only thing is towards the Ukrainian president, unfortunately, it wasn't mentioned that Trump considers him friendly. But towards Putin, the Russian dictator, unfortunately, yes. Because Trump, once again, does not abandon hope, despite possible pressure, despite possible sanctions on Russian oil. The American president does not rule out that friendly relations can be maintained, and in fact, with Putin, they can continue to get along and try to negotiate just as it happened before. So actually, what's the difference? What does this mean for us? Friends, as I predicted, the issue of the deal will become critical, and it will be dependent on the possibilities of future assistance. And the longer Ukraine delays the process, as we study and make proposals, we have the right to do so. We are a sovereign state, and certainly the Ukrainian national interest must be taken into account when concluding this agreement. And here, the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, is right. But we also cannot delay too much because the issue is of extraordinary importance right now. After all, so if Ukraine does not sign the agreement on rare earth metals, it must be understood that Trump will perceive it as a refusal, and most likely with a high degree of probability. This will affect the fact that he simply will not continue providing military aid and intelligence to Ukraine in the future. Because the issue now is that the previous package for Ukraine was approved on December 31st, 2024 by the Biden administration. During Trump's term, we have not yet received aid packages. And thus, when the question arises about extending and providing new packages, of course, what will be at stake? The point is that Trump might not approve them and not extend them because he will say, well, the agreement wasn't signed. Therefore, we have to sign the agreement no matter what anyone says. I understand that, yes, the question is there, but don't forget that the oligarchs were essentially receiving these minerals, they were collecting rent from them, and so on. Now, we must say that maintaining a strategic partnership with the USA is very important, especially against the backdrop of the uncertain positions of the Europeans. We are, of course, expecting a military mission directly in Ukraine, which will discuss the parameters of sending military contingents. This has reached another level, another tier. However, the opinion and position of the USA, their strategic support is very important for us. Be that as it may, after the economy and finances, security will follow. That's how it has been. The Marshall Plan was implemented in Europe and then NATO was created, with the aim of protection, including American investments. The same can happen here. This is worth understanding. And in fact, this is what we need to strive for. Because otherwise, the pressure on Ukraine will increase. There will likely be even more publications in American and other media about revelations and disclosures. There will be events, and they will write about possible elections as The Economist did. Well, this is also a position of pressure on Ukraine, on the Ukrainian government, that the elections are imminent, they are not far off, they are inevitable this year. This issue has already been decided. After Vitkov stated this, now The Economist is writing about it. And it creates the impression that indeed these elections are about to take place. That is, there will be pressure, and it will not be easy for us. There are ways out of this situation. Transformation of the battlefield. Implementation of innovative technical solutions to enter the war of the future and enhance our capabilities, including being ready to deploy them. 4. Strikes against Russia in the occupied territories as well as directly on the territory of the Russian Federation. And maintaining the strategic partnership, cooperation with the United States, agreement, and further joint movement. And of course, Europe's support is already needed. Of course, do the utmost to ensure that military contingents from Europe, Britain, and France appear. You want and fear Russia that it will launch 100, 200, 300 missiles at Poland, the Baltic countries, or Finland. And if you are wary of this, stand with us. Let's jointly restrain this terrible aggressor and fend off these dangers. This is our position, and we will continue to fight. Friends, please subscribe to my channel and be sure to leave your comments. I'm very interested in what you think about the issues raised, the transformation of the war, and the rare earth metals agreement. I'm not asking about Trump. I see that this topic already irritates you. I react to everything. I monitor everything. But still, well, what can we do? We cannot avoid talking about it. Also, leave your like and recommend this video to your friends. And most importantly, remember that with confidence and God's help, we look and move only forward. Take care of yourselves. Glory to Ukraine.